Imagine stepping outside your front door. No coat, no boots, no gloves, no heated car waiting in the driveway, no warm house to return to. The temperature is below minus 30 degrees Celsius. The wind is strong enough to freeze exposed skin in minutes. Snow stretches to the horizon in every direction. Nothing grows here. No trees, no farms, no roads, just ice. Most people today wouldn't survive a single night. Yet for thousands of years, human beings didn't just survive in places like this. They built families, raised children, created art, told stories, and lived entire lives on the frozen edge of the world. So how did ancient people survive the polar ice cap? No electricity, no supermarkets, no central heating, no modern medicine. Just ice, darkness, and some of the harshest conditions on Earth. The answer begins more than 5,000 years ago. When archaeologists excavate ancient Arctic settlements, they find something surprising. Not desperate camps built by people constantly on the edge of death, but evidence of organized communities, carefully constructed shelters, sophisticated tools, beautiful carvings, and technologies perfectly adapted to a world of snow and ice. These discoveries reveal an important truth. The people who lived here weren't simply enduring the Arctic, they understood it. In many ways, they understood it better than most of us ever could. Let's reconstruct a typical winter day. You wake up in complete darkness, not because it's early, because during parts of the Arctic winter, the sun doesn't rise at all. Days, weeks, sometimes months pass without daylight. The world outside is black. Inside your shelter, however, there is warmth. Not much, but enough. The heat comes from a small stone lamp fueled by seal oil. Archaeologists have discovered these lamps throughout ancient Arctic settlements. They were one of the most important inventions ever created for survival in the far north. The lamp provides light. The lamp provides heat. The lamp melts snow into drinking water. The lamp dries clothing. One tool, 4 essential jobs. Nothing is wasted. You sit with your family. The air smells faintly of burning oil. The walls around you are insulated with animal skins. Outside, temperatures may be cold enough to kill a person in hours. Inside, life continues. After eating, preparations begin for the day's hunt. This is where survival truly starts, because in the Arctic, food is everything. You cannot gather berries during winter. You cannot harvest crops. You cannot rely on plants. Most of your calories come from animals: seals, fish, caribou, whales, and every hunt carries risk. Archaeological evidence shows that ancient Arctic peoples developed hunting tools specifically designed for this environment. Harpoons with detachable heads, bone fishing hooks, carefully shaped spear points, each one refined over generations, because a small improvement could mean the difference between eating and starving. By mid-morning, hunters leave the shelter. The cold strikes immediately. Breath freezes in the air. Snow crunches beneath every step. The landscape appears empty, but experienced hunters know where to look. Far out on the sea ice are breathing holes, small openings where seals surface for air. Hunters may wait beside one of these holes for hours, completely motionless, completely silent. Imagine standing in freezing temperatures without moving, not for 10 minutes, not for an hour, for an entire afternoon. Then, suddenly, a seal appears. The hunter has one chance, one throw. Miss, precious food escapes beneath the ice. Hit, and an entire family may eat for days. This wasn't luck, it was skill, developed through years of practice, and the reward was enormous. A seal provided food, its skin became clothing, its fat became fuel, its bones became tools. Every part had value, nothing was wasted. But surviving the Arctic required more than successful hunting. It required solving a problem that modern people rarely think about. How do you stay warm? Today, if you're cold, you turn up the thermostat. Ancient Arctic peoples didn't have that luxury, so they created some of the most effective cold weather clothing in human history. Archaeologists have found bone needles dating back thousands of years. At first glance, they seem insignificant, tiny pieces of bone with carefully drilled holes. But these needles changed everything because they allowed people to sew fitted clothes, not loose garments, not simple wraps. Tailored clothing designed specifically to trap heat. Animal fur was turned inward. Layers were combined. Seams were carefully stitched.
The result was so effective that some traditional Arctic clothing outperformed early modern winter gear. In other words, ancient people weren't surviving despite the cold. They were engineering solutions to it. Their technology simply looked different from ours. Then there were the shelters. Most people imagine igloos. And yes, snow houses were used in some regions, but they were only part of the story. Archaeologists have discovered houses built from driftwood, whale bones, stone foundations, animal skin, whatever materials the environment provided. Again, survival depended on adaptation. People used what was available, and what they created worked. Some settlements were occupied year after year, generation after generation, which brings us to perhaps the most important survival tool of all, knowledge. Because no one learns how to survive the Arctic alone. Every skill had to be taught. How to recognize dangerous ice, how to predict storms, how to track animals,
how to repair tools, how to build shelters. One mistake could be fatal, and that's why stories mattered.
Today, we often think of stories as entertainment. For ancient Arctic peoples, stories were survival manuals, lessons hidden inside narratives, warnings disguised as legends, knowledge passed from grandparents to children who would one day pass it to their own families for thousands of years. And perhaps the most remarkable thing archaeologists have found isn't evidence of survival, it's evidence of culture. Because even in one of the harshest environments on Earth, people still made art. Researchers have uncovered carved ivory figures, decorated tools, jewelry, ornaments, objects that served no immediate survival purpose. Think about that. These were people living in extreme cold, people who depended on successful hunts for food, people facing dangers most of us can barely imagine, and they still found time to create beauty. Because humans don't stop being human when life becomes difficult. We create.
We decorate. We tell stories. We make meaning. The Arctic didn't change that. If anything, it made it more important. As evening approaches, hunters return. The community gathers. Food is shared. Tools are repaired. Stories are told around the glow of seal oil lamps. Outside, darkness stretches endlessly across the frozen landscape. Inside, people laugh, talk, teach, remember, and prepare for tomorrow. Because survival in the Arctic was never about one person. It was about cooperation. No individual could hunt every animal. No individual could know every skill. No individual could survive every challenge alone. Communities survived because they worked together. And that may have been their greatest adaptation of all. Today, most of us live in climate-controlled homes. If we need food, we visit a store. If we need warmth, we press a button. Ancient Arctic peoples had no such systems. They understood exactly where their food came from, exactly how their shelter worked, exactly how much effort survival required. And despite living in conditions that would terrify most modern humans, they succeeded. Not for a few years, not for a few generations, for thousands of years. The frozen Arctic wasn't a place they conquered. It was a place they learned to belong. And perhaps that's the most incredible part of the story. The polar ice cap looks empty, hostile, unforgiving, a place where life shouldn't exist. But human history tells a different story. Because wherever humans went, even to the coldest edges of the earth, they carried with them the same things that built every civilization: ingenuity, cooperation, knowledge, and the stubborn refusal to give up. Against all odds, they transformed one of the harshest environments on Earth into a home.